43 did.
No, 43.
43, yeah, oh yeah, in the accident, and a lot of workers got cleaned it up, got a pretty bad
There was
deal.
a lot of cancer later.
Sorry?
There was a lot of cancer later, so quite a few people died.
Yeah, according to Greenpeace, 100,000 people have died in Europe because of it.
According to the Soviet government, no. So
Yeah, well, fair enough. No, people did die, very sad. Why did they die? Because there's no golf ball encasement around that plant.
The whole damn thing was a mess.
Yeah.
It was designed to fail dangerous.
It was a positive void coefficient reactor, similar to the ones that run in Ukraine. Sorry, one of my pawns, because I know people at the Atomic Weapons Establishment, was basically reading through the British nuclear industry's technical reports on nuclear accidents. So 3 Mile Island was a stuck valve, and Chernobyl, the reactor basically positive void. If it loses the moderator, then it melts down, whereas most of our reactors are negative void. The moderator is basically water. So if they lose the coolant, the water, they don't melt down because the moderator is missing and the chain reaction stops.
Well, I hope you all understood that.
Sorry.
Yeah, good. Well, the real point is Ukrainian social relations and those of the Soviet Union were crap. Yeah. And they did an experiment to fool around with the reactor, and the result was disaster. And there's no encasing because they didn't have the money or the technology or the nous to try to hold the whole thing together, which is what every nuclear power station in the West
The Soviets were quite smart. They just didn't have awfully much money and wanted to build it anyway.
Well, that's right. And also it was the Ukraine, which has not historically been favoured by Russia and the Kremlin and so on. So, you know, the real point is people did die, but it brings out that safety is always a social question. You know, it's not a question of just what's intrinsic to the science and the technology. It's always a question of money, politics, regime, morale, regulation, legislation, people on site, and all of these things. Here's Beck. Sorry, I talked about him already. I thought he wasn't coming. There's your book title. And you know, Chernobyl was important in all of that, and he did anticipate Rumsfeld's unknown unknown. Now, why am I in favour of nuclear power, having dismissed some of the critics? Come to radioactive decay in a second. Well, the main thing is, once you've built a nuclear power station, providing you can get hold of the uranium, your costs are largely fixed, you've got a little bit of manpower, and there are 19 sources of uranium around the world that Britain's already using. So worry about peak uranium, like peak gas, and peak coal, and peak water. And there's a book published by a Californian hippie called Peak Everything, which is what we're supposed to be facing from our environmental friends. Once you're able to get hold of the uranium, you know, that's only a very small part. You'll see 11% on fuel of the actual operation. So you're not playing the coal markets, you're not playing the gas markets. I'm convinced that you've fixed the capital, and from then on, it's a very reliable, high safety source of low carbon energy. So that's why I'm in favour of it. If you look at how the nuclear energy question in Britain is taken up, one never really hears, because there's so much on the back foot from the UK Atomic Energy Authority or the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. There are about 8 quangos dealing with nuclear in Britain, but they all keep a very low profile. And there's the World Nuclear News, which is worth a look, not least about 4th generation passive safety devices. This is generation 4, a whole website devoted to that kind of technology. I might add that the ITER project, ITER, for nuclear fusion, is the subject of $10 billion, I think it is, worth of funds over 20 years. Divide 20 into 10 billion, you'll find not such a lot of money for an inexhaustible source of energy for the world. And only with the help of the Chinese, I think the Indians, has the West gone ahead with that project financially. Well, if you look at that government white paper in January, it's January 2008, a very interesting thing. Everybody thinks, especially Greens think, that the government is pro-nuclear. If you read that white paper, and I had the misfortune of spending a holiday in Turkey by the beach, slogging through it last year to write the book, you'll find that they are at best ambivalent about it. And in the Energise book, you can't read it, but here, the wonderful thing about PDFs, you know when you search for words in PDFs, they'll give you the number of mentions if you count them up. Security of installations, 110 mentions in the white paper. Risk, 135. Decommissioning, costly process, 137. Climate, 142. Security of energy supply, because they're very worried about UK PLC, 150. Emissions, 209. Regulation, 216. Safety, 233. Cost, 383. Waste, 444. Benefits, 54. Research, in the sense of R&D, 23. Growth, in the sense of energy demand, 10. Innovation, 1. So you've got 400 references to waste, 200 to risk, 300 to cost, and 1 to innovation. Now, it's no good kicking a dead corpse. We'll leave New Labour. Have a look at the Tory party policy. That's a kind of semi-dead corpse. And what you'll find is that they are equally ambivalent about nuclear power. Of course, E.ON and some big nuclear companies would like them built, these reactors, but they're saying to the government, after you, and the government says to them, no, after you, in that English way. And if you look at the Tories' policy, the first thing they say in their website about energy is they say nuclear power is not a substitute for renewable sources of energy. Right? And here they have it completely upside down. It's rather that renewables, especially wind power, is not a substitute for nuclear. Yes?
There was a debate on BBC actually about the nuclear power station plant building it in UK. And they said that even if they wanted to build it, they wouldn't be able to because there's simply not enough experts in this country to do so. And in order to do so, they would have to import a lot of workers here.
Terrible, yes, immigrants. They're a terrible thing, you know. No, I think you're quite right. There is a big shortage. Nearly all the people in the nuclear industry now are over 45. And that everybody has recognised, even if they are ambivalent about nuclear power, that you won't even be able to decommission stuff unless you get some 20-somethings who've got, you know, an MSc or a PhD in the thing. The second thing, which is what I thought you were going to mention, but is also a problem, is E.ON is very nervous about building or investing in nuclear power in this country because of the planning regime. Planning regime will barely allow you to build a conservatory on your house, let alone a nuclear power station, you know, that is going to kill everybody.
I think the government...
Wait a minute, we have a hand there.
I think that was one reason why the wind people pulled out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, planning is a big problem. Now, Labour's solution to that is the Infrastructure Planning Commission, which is a bunch of the great and the good, unelected, with lots of Greens on it, who are supposed to take executive action. The Tories, quite rightly in some ways, think that that is undemocratic. But then, you know, somebody has to make a decision, and that seems very difficult in this country. But anyway, here's a very interesting thing. This lady, who's a feminist icon, Alice Stewart, found that pregnancies associated with X-rays in hospitals led to deformed children. And she did it in 1958, exactly in my favourite period. That's also when CND was founded. Right? You had the Aldermaston marches. So the fear of radiation, some sort of alien force, is really something that has mediated hostility to war into hostility to nuclear power. Now let me just deal with the radiation question. If you take the intermediate and high-level nuclear waste in Britain, which is the hot stuff, it's 450,000 cubic meters of that. How's your maths? Take the cube root of 450,000 cubic meters, and you'll find it's 75 meters by 75 meters by 75 meters. In other words, all the nuclear waste that has been developed since Calder Hall, I think in 1953 or 6, for more than 50 years, could be got and put in Birkbeck College. In fact, in an annex of Birkbeck College. Now that's only conceptual, but are we really saying in the 21st century there's no way we can deal with nuclear waste when it occupies a few floors of a building?
Especially since the actual waste itself is mostly not really waste, it's just really crap nuclear plant